Hi, welcome to the Great Immigrant Dream podcast, where we will talk to immigrant entrepreneurs and unravel their journey of entrepreneurship. These are people who came in with nothing to a different country with a different culture, different language, and entirely different ecosystem, and ended up creating something big in entrepreneurship and making a mark for themselves. We will capture their stories of courage in overcoming the innumerable challenges that immigrants face, their determination through all these difficulties. These are stories of immigrants who are true embodiments of the great American dream. I'm your host, Kumar V, an immigrant entrepreneur myself, and I want to inspire you to fulfill your great immigrant dream. How do you go from navigating peer pressure in engineering school to negotiating multi-million-dollar deals in the credit industry? Ritesh Ranjan's story isn't just about climbing the corporate ladder. It's about defying the odds. From engineering to mastering the credit world at Capital One, his journey is a lesson in courage, attitude, and dreaming beyond circumstances.
No, you're right. I have invested my career in the financial services industry, and I really, really love it. My dad used to be in bank when I was little. He was a branch manager, so I would often try to snuck up with him, go to his branch, and see what he does. Back then, there were no computers in his bank, so he would tally the notes, and that was my favorite part. Look at these notes. He has control over all that money. Later, did I realize that by control means he was accountable. He didn't own any of it. Uh, but it feels great to be able to advance my understanding of the space, first of all, and then learn enough to contribute back to the industry and to the society and to the customer base. I feel fortunate because I don't think I had this vision super early, but as soon as I started my professional career, I knew that I wanted to work in banking. And to be able to do that, to be sitting here with you, it feels great. So thanks for having me on your podcast.
Of course, it's a pleasure. So, Ritesh, the theme of our podcast is to capture the successful stories of immigrant entrepreneurs and intrapreneurs and successful business leaders like yourself. So, tell us a little about your journey. Although you mentioned that you knew that you wanted to get in the banking industry, let's take a step back. Let's talk about your journey to this place.
Absolutely. I come from a place in India where I grew up all the way until I went to my engineering college. This place is dear to me because it's my home, except there were a lot of challenge. I still go back and enjoy the fact that I have people, I have my relatives there. However, the challenges have not gone down. In fact, just to provide you a scale of the challenges, if you rank ordered the state in India where I come from in the order of population, it will be 11th most populous country in the world. At the same time, if you rank ordered in terms of poverty, it would be 11th poorest country in the world.
And you're saying country?
Country. It would be 11th poorest country in the world. And this, I don't say that to downplay the importance and the resources that the state has provided me, but just to give you a scale of the challenges. And I hope if any of your listeners are thinking in their head about aiming high or trying to pursue their dreams, they're not held back by where they come from. That's a start of the journey, and it's up to us where we take ourselves. I think just to take you back there, in that state, I was in a very small town. My dad used to work in bank, and we were 4 siblings and 3 more cousins who would live with us so that they can get some decent education. And in a 900 square feet house, we used to be 9 of us living there. Back then, we didn't realize that was anything special or painful, but we all can contextualize it now. I think the first challenge I faced was that of gaining courage. I was a really good student, but there were 11 students in my class. So I didn't know where I stood. Was I really that good? Or it was just the function of this little small town tucked in somewhere where very few people can reach. And then the other challenge was you look around success stories, you learn from them, and you try to emulate them as a kid. And your dreams are in part shaped by the success stories that you hear around yourself. Well, the success story in my little town were folks who were qualified to get a government job, which was probably the salary for which would be $30. And from very little, my parents in, tried to instill the belief that, hey, I could go the distance. I am a good student. I should not be thinking about the surrounding and I should be aiming high. The folks that we see on TV, I should be trying to become them. Except it's hard because in the morning you get out of the house, go to school, hang out with the kids, and then you spend time in the society. You see people around you, success stories. And every day my struggle was, hey, do I think I will become an engineer someday, or am I being unrealistic about it? Because the people who are being celebrated around me were like 5 notches below an engineer. And every day I would some hours of the day, I would be like, there is no way I'm stopping until I become an engineer. And I'll tell you why I wanted to become an engineer. And some hours I was like, am I being fooled? Look at these people who are being celebrated. They're not there. And the exposure to the professional world or the rest of world was so limited that we growing up only knew 2 kind of successful people. One who went to engineering colleges and became an engineer. The others were doctors, and doctors were like gods. Today,
Yeah.
when I go to doctor, I prepare my speech. How am I going to explain my problem? And it was a very overwhelming experience. So my teachers in my school, who personally knew nobody who became an engineer, they gave me their best guess. Like, if you're good at maths, you have a shot at becoming an engineer. And well, there goes the dream. Like, I was like, I want to be an engineer. Once I finished my grade 8, there was no school offering 9th and 10th in my town. So I went to a nearby town and I enrolled in the best school in that whole district by accident. I went there with my brother and tried to see which school I can get enrolled into. And somebody said that's the best school, by the way. I'm like, if that's the best school, why don't I try to get enrolled there? And I go there, walking into the staff room, and everyone they were kind of making fun of me. Like, you thought you could just walk into this prestigious school and get an admit. And I was naive. I didn't realize that they were making fun. I thought they're being serious. And I said, yes. And they, just for the fun of it, they started testing me. I will tell you, I don't remember all of it, but I didn't score 95 or something. But the fact that I had the courage and I scored 80 coming from where I did come from, for some reason, the principal of that school took a liking to me and he found a way to get me admission. Every morning at 3 a.m., I would leave my place, just go take a train to the next place and spend a couple hours on the station. And then when the sun came out, I would make my way to the school. Did that for 2 years. And 10th is a big milestone in India. And I secured the highest marks in the whole district. And that was the first time I got comfortable with the conviction that, hey, I could do it. I could be one of those guys, who are successful. And that was the anecdote behind the courage that I wanted to share. Because you can read in books. I mean, all our books were filled with heroic stories of warriors, of scientists. But you need people around you who have walked the same path and have gone the distance to be able to inspire you. And I would put half of my success to luck. I just got exposed to right people at the right time. But my classmates were not that lucky. Today, I can't make contact with any of my classmates from them. So just a humbling experience. And I think that moment of gaining the courage was the propellant that took me to the little success I have today. And I would put a lot to that moment. From that moment, I was convinced. And when I was convinced, and I was sharp. So when I was convinced, I would put a lot of work, and I knew that I wouldn't worry too much about outcome, because in my head, I was like, hey, I'm sharp. I'm going to work hard and I'm going to get there. Things gotten better from that place on. I went to an engineering college. I did go to there. 4 years, I studied mechanical engineering, one of the prestigious institutes in India, and came out of it right away. I knew that I wanted to go in the area of business. But folks told me like, hey, work for a few years, gain some professional experience. I joined a firm. In 2 years, they sent me to US. And I came. I told my manager back then, like, hey, promise me you'll get me back in a year.
You back to India.
To India.
Okay.
Because I wanted to pursue business education. That had become my motto at then. And I said, like, I want to come back. I want to apply to the good business schools and go do that. I came here and I suddenly started getting paid in dollars. I'll be honest. And I was like, man, this is a lot of money. And so like 1 year, I extended it 2 years. And this time I was convinced that I was going to go back, go to business school. Except I ran into some leaders at American Express, is where I used to work. And they said like, hey, the best business schools in the world happen to be in this country. Do you want to maybe think about that? And just like the naive guy I was when I walked into that prestigious school, I just started visiting some of the best business schools in here. I figured like, what's the way to apply? And I was lucky enough to go to one of the good ones, University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill, go Tar Heels. So I think that was one phase of my journey.
There are a couple of things which are amazing here. Personally, I'm inspired. One is that question which bugs a lot of us. I've read this, and a lot of us know this, that someone shared this with me, that you are what you are, the way your life is, the way you think is an average of the 5 people who you hang out the most with. But how do you go ahead and imagine and create something which is beyond what is, forget about 5, what you see the next 500 people around you? I think this is one of the biggest challenges which keeps a lot of us stuck to where we are. I know these 5 people. This is what my worldview is. How do I know what exists beyond? It lies in the space of I don't know, and I do not know that I don't know about this. So, that's the space. And living in that space and creating something in that space is amazing. And then I am very inspired, very impressed by your story of walking to the school. That reminds me of that famous Steve Jobs quote that all of us have heard, when he used to say that, people don't pick up the phone. I picked up the phone and I called the CEO of a huge company, HP then, and I said, okay, I'm Bill Gates, I'm young child, whatever years old. And then he helped me. It is about, at times, naivety, at times not knowing that, I can get failure is one of the best ways to go ahead and achieve. I say this, all entrepreneurs are somewhat blind, somewhat deaf, somewhat foolish. Otherwise, no one in their sane mind would go ahead and embrace that 24/7 life. So that's amazing. I love that story. I love that story. And thank you. That's been inspiring.
If I may take like a few more seconds.
Yeah, of course,
like,
please.
It's all down to my parents. They created this dream inside my head that you don't belong here, you belong somewhere else. And they somehow figured out the art of me, at least partly believing in it. So all the credit to them.
So, Ritesh, I hear self-belief. I hear not being limited by what you see around you. And I hear that almost, that courage born almost out of naivety, but that courage in kind of, taking that leap of faith, even your MBA story, you landing a business school, you landing at UNC Chapel Hill. So all of these stories, what would you say, and these 3 are very important values. What would you say are your other important values or other important kind of, things that are your North Star that push you to be who you are and every single day?
Yeah, I think there are a couple things. One, I think attitude matters more than aptitude in my experience. I don't have a golden rule that I can prove here, but just reflecting on my own journey, I think once you set your mind on something and you are committed, you are convinced, you will find ways. You just have to be flexible about which route you want to take. I mean, I'm sure we all have read Adam Grant, who does a great job of delineating this thing. Like, hey, how rigid should you be about your goals? On one hand, you hear this inspiring stories about this person set his mind at X. No matter what, he became X. Whereas Adam Grant comes and says, think again. And then he does a great job of delineating what think again tells you is you should know you want to be X, but you shouldn't be rigid about how to get to it. Every day you get up, you do your best, you approach a lot of life from the angle of curiosity. No matter how much time you have spent in a particular area, hey, the world is every day changing. And like approaching from the lens of curiosity also takes away a lot of stress in the life. Like you feel very happy when you are proven wrong or when you learn something new and you just feel that you learned something. So one is attitude is more important than aptitude in my opinion. Human beings are smart. You know, we don't have to prove we are top of the food chain. Attitude really, really matters. And like, like this is very cliche. Don't give up. Once again, I want to clarify the context by don't give up. I don't mean to say like if you need to go from here to Pennsylvania and you decide that biking is the best way. Well, when I say don't give up, like don't give up on going to Pennsylvania. Like feel free to give up on bike. Feel free to take a detour. Feel free to walk. Feel free to take a bus. Feel free to take a ride. And like, in fact, actively look out for better ways to get to Pennsylvania. And when you reach Pennsylvania, you feel like, you know what? I really want to go to New York. I mean, just don't feel bad about yourself. All these years, I have been feeling that Pennsylvania is my final destination. And there is nothing like final destination. We should always keep learning and keep innovating in our own little ways. That's one side of like my lessons, my lesson learned. And the second side of it is one of the great sources for learning and progressing is people. Identify who are the people you want to learn from, who have the knowledge, who have the gift, and don't feel shy. Take the initiative. Go. What's the worst can happen? You just go and say like, hey, I would love to grab 15 minutes of your time. You won't believe the openness people have in this country about giving their time to help somebody learn. Once I was in business school, and from my alumni directory, I was interested in banking. So I looked up all the big banks. There was this incredibly successful female banker in Goldman Sachs. And I just wrote her an email, like my template email, like, hey, I would love to learn from your career and how I can grow in financial service industry. And she said, like, next time you're in New York, why don't you stop by?
Wow.
And I was like, okay. Next time I was in New York and I just emailed her, like, I am going to be in New York. And she said, come over to Goldman Sachs. She was managing director of one of the most significant trading floors in Goldman Sachs. So I walk up to her office and she's just talking like, the person, my neighbor. And she was so kind. She was so open. She shared her journey. She took me to the trading floor from where,
okay,
like they have global trades being operated. And I was like, this is amazing. And at no point she made me feel overwhelmed. And she even like learned about me, gave advice, like what routes I could take. And like I kept up with it. Since then, that was like 10, 12 years back, even in my company. I just feel very comfortable just reaching out to someone out of the blue and say like, hey, I want to learn about what you do. That sounds super cool. And 90% of the time, people are very, very happy.
See, that's such an everyday story, but that's so inspiring. A lot of us, and I think all of us in some situations are stopped by the fear of, what'll happen? Should I even try? But for all of us, whatever success we've had, a lot of that has to be because of when we sort of, exceeded our own limitations and we went ahead, reached out, we went ahead, did something which even we thought in the first place that we shouldn't be doing it, or maybe I cannot. So that's an amazing story. I've not visited the trading floor. I've not even been to Goldman Sachs, but that's so exciting. That's interesting.
People are very open. More accomplished people are, I have realized, more open they are to helping others.
Ritesh, let's talk a little about would you say that, any part of your job is intrapreneurial in nature?
I think there's a little bit of credit, a lot of credit I should give to my company as well. I have spent 10 years in Capital One and they have a very unique culture among banks. I'm also a consultant for big banks, so I have some idea of the culture. And I'm not like downplaying anyone of the big banks. They are like behemoth and they are successful for a reason. They have plenty of good stuff. But as far as culture goes, Capital One promotes people to bring their perspective. In fact, like discussions, when we have formal discussions, it's less about Q&A and finding an answer. It's more about the perspective. And that's the seed of entrepreneurship. People, when they spend 6 months here, they realize, oh, that's normal. And then they start coming up with ideas. Even though it's within the confine of a large corporate, we always come up with some very oblique way to thinking about the same problem. I work in deal space, and there's no playbook here. There's a large Fortune 50 company wants to launch a co-brand car, and they look around and say, which issuer I want to work for? Well, if they're a big company, a lot of issuer want to work with them, us, one of them. Sometimes we just don't approach the deal. We internally evaluate, we make arguments, we say like, you know what, it's a great company, not appropriate for us to partner. And that takes a lot of entrepreneurial thinking. We just go capture information, gain perspective, talk to people, and we make very bold debates, arguments about, hey, the company that is twice our size, we say it's not in our interest to partner with them. And people are very open. We do that. The other kind of it is, there are many leaders in my company whose claim to fame is they made an argument for maybe 1,100 times and then got leaders to listen to them. Then they got leaders to agree to them. Then they convinced leaders to invest into their idea. Then they created the product and it became a breakthrough product. There are plenty of leaders. I have a small, comparatively such experience. I also made an argument and people started listening and they invested. And like at one point we had a team of 50 people working on it and we launched it. And it's an integral part of how we operate business now. So yeah, within the confines of corporate, we have been able to bring some entrepreneurial energy. The other way I see is these days there is big companies who have balance sheet are very open to acquiring entrepreneurial companies. And we have a few platform companies that we have acquired. And it's a great exposure. Get to know that.
I didn't know this about Capital One, that they have this whole, this tenacious, they promote this tenacious culture that, okay, you know what, you can make an argument 1,100 times. If it falls flat, go ahead and make it 1,101st time and maybe it will fly. That's interesting. That's amazing. Tell us a few things that, say, inspire you. Say, let's talk about books. You are an intellectual person. Tell us about a few books that have inspired you.
Yeah, I think I alluded to Think Again. I think that's one of the books that I find fascinating. I think I have read it thrice. To my surprise, I shouldn't say surprise, knowing how good the book is. This year, I was chosen to participate in a program called Graduate Credit College within Capital One. It's a very prestigious one. From every line of business, only one person is nominated to participate in it. And I was from my line of business. Approximately 30% of the entire 1 year long course was dedicated around lessons from Think Again. Every 2 months, we would be required to study 2 chapters and we would go and discuss and how that relates to how we operate in our business. It's fascinating the amount of wisdom and the practical wisdom Adam has been able to put in his book. That is fabulous. That book is fabulous, I think. In fact, in my personal decisions as well. When I feel like I'm very convinced about a decision, I just take Adam Grant's framework and it's like, let me think again. Because like it's dangerous to be very convinced, is my opinion. You should be a little less convinced than extremely convinced. It's just, we have only limited visibility into the world. And the world that we have visibility into is changing every day. And to assume that I have full understanding of a decision is a little premature, I would say. So the Think Again has been a fantastic.
Well, let me pause you for a second here. I've not read that book. Based on my, just hearing what you said, how do you balance that with, how at times the drive of perfectionism stops people, or many of us use perfectionism as sort of as an excuse to procrastinate, to not take decisions, to avoid taking risky big decisions. How do you balance that? What do you say about that? What does Adam Grant have to say about it?
I think Adam Grant's philosophy, I'm going to be paraphrasing. If he sees me, he's not going to, but if he sees me, he probably will be mad how bad of a job I'm about to do. But I think like thinking again means just being open to new possibilities. As you are making the decisions, don't feel hamstrung about it. But if a 30-second after making a decision, if you realize, oh, I got a new information that changes my perspective, don't be shy. Don't think that, oh, you just set a benchmark for perfection. How can it be improved? Please understand that every decision is perfect within certain set of constraints. If you introduce 11 more constraints, that won't be a perfect decision. And therefore, we should not be losing sleep that, hey, the decision that I have all conviction about, that must be wrong. That's not how we should think. However, we should keep our eyes open and develop some system around us to continue to learn. And if we learn something new, just admit it and say like, hey, I have a better decision in my mind, and just do it. And there's no way for any of us to achieve to a point where we know everything and now we can make a perfect decision. So we don't need to be hamstrung or stressed about it. It takes practice to get comfortable with living that philosophy. In my own experience, I think when I read the book first time, like I think a few years back, instinctively agreed, except to act on it required practice. And this I have realized with every great philosophy book that I have read, that agreeing is an intellectual exercise. Living is a very different thing. And you need to just remind yourself like, hey, Think Again is number one book in my library. Therefore, I keep asking myself every few months, like, how many times have I thought again? Am I really living to that principle or not? And I remind myself, no, let me look to change some of my decisions just to get into the habit of it. And it has done wonders for me. Some of the personal decisions I have taken were literally by the fact that I reminded myself, think again. Am I thinking again or not? And I did, and I'm glad some of the decisions that I did.
So, although I'll go ahead and read that book, but what I'm listening, or the part that I'm willing to embrace in my life is about being open to new ideas, new paradigms, new sort of approaches to the same solution rather than being stuck. In my words, I would like to put that as being agile to your approach in getting there. Although I'll read the book and then let's see. But of course, when it comes to any intrapreneurial or entrepreneurial thing, I think being agile or being open to new ideas and suggestions is really important. And I think the big business leaders and the successful people I've met, none of them shy from saying, I don't know, or I will,
Yeah.
give me more time. I'll think about it. I'll learn more and I'll get back to you. So, yeah. And that takes courage. And that courage comes from a level of acceptance and comfort of your own self.
Yeah.
That I do not know everything, but I'm willing to learn and I'm smart enough to learn, so I can go ahead, learn, grab that, build on that, and then go ahead and do something better.
Yeah. And as I said, practicing is very important.
Right.
And like being humble is also very important. That takes me to a second book, if you're okay.
Sure. Yes. Yeah. Let's talk about it.
One of the observations, as I was rising the corporate ladder, one of the observation I've had was, look, when you are in middle manager level, you are very conscious about your image and making sure that people recognize you as a good talent, thoughtful person who makes relatively more right decisions than wrong. It's very difficult to open up and say like, hey, I don't know that. If this meeting is about bread and I come in and say like, what's bread? That's pretty that's pretty difficult position to be. Except when I look at like these VPs and like really high up leaders, they were routinely would come to meeting and was like, hey, Ritesh, hold on. What is that? And I'm like, is that a trick question? Because he is very sharp. That's why he's VP. And my assumption was he must know. Except like he has 1,100 things going on. Maybe he forgot, or maybe he just wants to get better at it, or maybe he just didn't know. And these are the leaders who would just like routinely would just come in and open up and say, I don't know, in front of 50 people. And here am I, like climbing up the ladder and being very conscious about it. I read this book called Mindset. It was another book that changed my behavior or my habits. There are a lot of books I have read that have changed my thinking, but there are some books that have changed my behavior. And one of the principles, Cheryl Dweck, if I'm not wrong, she had said that you have to train your brain to approach every meeting from the angle of curiosity. Just tell yourself, what am I going to learn in this meeting? And she said, like, it won't just happen because you like this idea. It took me a year, Kumar, to be comfortable with it. Like every day I kept practicing, and when I started becoming comfortable with it, it's so relaxing, so unnerving to be able to go to a meeting and be focused at learning and really like looking into subject matter and seeing like, oh, why does that not make sense? Maybe I don't understand. Hey, excuse me, can you just like spend 30 seconds to tell me about that? And you'd be amazed how many people had the same question and how much it takes the conversation forward for the entire group. Because now more people are jumping in with their ideas and thoughts and perspective. If a topic is more closed, you have the presenter who really knows it. And hopefully the decision maker, because they are decision maker in that area because they really know that topic. But then there are like 11 people, very accomplished people, who have great perspective. They're not able to bring all their wisdom to the table because they're missing some nuggets of equation. So the mindset was another book, I think, that I relish. I read a couple of times, and I would highly recommend to everyone.
This is something which I love about being a podcast host. I get to meet really smart people and talk to them. And in every single meeting, there is something which I personally get inspired by, and I want to pick up from that meeting. So, right now we're talking about curiosity, and I'm just putting it out. How amazing would that be for if each of us, like in your businesses, in the companies that you're working for, in whatever you're doing in your life, how amazing would that be if we could go ahead and approach that from the mindset of, okay, you know what, let's see, what am I going to learn today,
Yeah.
rather than being like, oh my God, yet another meeting, you anyway got to do it. Just changing your paradigm could make it from being like, oh my God, what do I do, to a paradigm of learning, growing. That's amazing. That's such a small shift, but that's so powerful. So thank you. I really like that. I really like the way you described the concept as well. So Ritesh, last question. Where can people find you, connect with you? How can people reach out to you the way that senior leader from Goldman Sachs helped you? So how can people connect?
No, absolutely. For a couple of years, I had on my LinkedIn profile that if you have any interest in discussing these lending topics, please feel free to reach out to me. And some people did. I took it out at the advice of some professional people. However, I'm going to probably put it back. So you could find me on LinkedIn. My handle is Ritesh RRR, Ritesh RRR. And my full name is Ritesh Ranjan. And if you search that with capital one, they're not. I think there are only two Ritesh Ranjans here. You will be able to find me. As I said, I am very passionate about lending and credit and economics that is attached to the lending decision. If anybody is interested in brainstorming, in exchanging ideas, I am always up for it. Every time I have done that, I think like I have walked back with more learning than the person who reached out. So I would appreciate it. No topic is small. And if you feel hearing my story that you would like to brainstorm, you are facing some similar situations and you could benefit from brainstorming. I don't have a panacea. I don't have a solution for any problem, but I can share some perspective and I can brainstorm with it, and we can hopefully help anybody who would like to reach out.
So for my audience, my takeaways from this podcast is think again, be open to thinking again. I'll read Adam Grant's book, being curious and knocking on doors, even if it is with some degree of naivety, that can open a lot of doors. And I had the pleasure of talking to Ritesh Ranjan. Ritesh promised to all of us it is being recorded on YouTube and all other podcast platforms. If any of you want to do a startup or want to talk about around financing, lending, or have any such ideas which you want to talk to an expert, he said a yes. So please go ahead and reach out to him. Who knows what the future holds for anyone listening to this. Thank you, Ritesh. It was amazing having you. Thank you for the candid conversation. I learned a lot. And I hope our listeners go ahead and enjoy this conversation a lot.
Thank you, Kumar. It was a pleasure, and you are too kind in your words. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye. God bless. Thank you for tuning in to the Great Immigrant Dream podcast. Keep dreaming, keep striving, and remember, the immigrant spirit knows no bounds.